Warning, this video contains team selection and captain choices which some viewers may find offensive.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. Before looking to double Game Week 22, let's see how things went before all the cup games in Game Week 21. The big decision I made last game week was opting to start Bernd Leno instead of Kepa in goal, and that frustratingly cost me 7 points. With Chelsea being away to Liverpool, I still feel there was logic in taking that risk, but only myself to blame for the points lost there. Rotating goalkeepers very rarely goes well. Elsewhere though, with Cancelo missing out completely last week, to my luck, Konsa auto-subbed in from my bench last week with 7 points of his own. So despite losing out on 7 points between the sticks, Konsa did soften the blow there, a nice stroke of luck for me. The other big talking point of the game week was Erling Haaland bagging his already 4th hat-trick of the season. And although his big hauls can't be celebrated in FPL, when he does score big, it's more a feeling of relief that I didn't go against him. And admittedly, I was considering going for Ivan Toney, who only managed a 1-pointer against Leeds. Huge relief there, and incredibly punishing for any of those of you who did try going differential. So it was a score of 75 last game week, with the auto-sub of Cancelo to Konsa actually making a bit of difference. Still a red arrow and a small drop in ranking, but 75 points was around the par score last week, whereas I'd have considered 68 a much poorer week. So let's move on to double Game Week 22 now, and having decided to see how the cup games all played out first during the break, and therefore switching off for the majority of the last 2 weeks, I came back to my team a day or two ago, and I've made the late and potentially questionable decision to use my wildcard. So let's see how the team now lines up. Now, I'm very aware that strategically, wildcarding now may not be the optimum move, and with the upcoming blank game weeks in 25, 28 and 32, I know now that manoeuvring those is going to be a lot more difficult for me personally. I think a big factor in me choosing to wildcard now though, is that I made the mistake after the restart of not backing Arsenal enough. And considering they have a superb run of fixtures now, a double game week in 23, and more notably no blanks all the way up until game week 32 at minimum, getting the triplet from them that I wanted in Ødegaard, Saka and Gabriel played a big part in my decision. 3 players that barring injury I can just set and forget for a while now. Of course, I do now find myself wildcarding into a team that admittedly a lot of top FPL managers are already set up with near enough. And that's simply down to me picking a subpar team for the restart, and I was keen to get that rectified. Obviously, I had of course considered taking a -4 this week, probably followed by a further -4 in game week 23, to get me near to the wildcard team that I put together now, which isn't completely different. But considering I'm a very hit-averse player, I just hate that feeling of constantly being a step behind the team that I want. And having looked ahead to future game weeks, even with a -4 this week and next, I still wasn't quite where I wanted to be, constantly chasing my tail, taking hits in the process, and never being fully satisfied with my squad. FPL is no fun if you go into every game week disliking your team and not feeling well set up, so I've chose to pull the trigger. I know it won't be a popular decision to wildcard now, but ultimately we play this game for fun, and it's now made me feel a lot happier about my team as a whole going forward. On a personal level, that's the important thing. And even though I haven't made wholesale changes, I've now got the players that I wanted to bring in. I've been able to restructure my team, and at the same time, I've been able to do it all hit-free. In fairness, wildcarding around this point was part of that rough plan I made during the restart. And one of my justifications for doing so is that I've now already used the bench boost chip. So that's one thing I don't need to worry about anymore in terms of setting up for the bench boost with a wildcard in a future game week. From here on in, I can simply focus on my starting 11 every game week for the rest of the season, and that should make it a bit easier when it comes to manoeuvring blanks and doubles. So let's quickly now talk through some of the inclusions. Arrizabalaga stays between the sticks, and that's due to Chelsea, just like Arsenal, notably not having any blank game weeks at all the way until at least game week 32. Considering I'm now without a wildcard, I need to think about the long term, and Chelsea won't give me any blanking headaches for a good while. In blank game week 28, Chelsea also boasts a decent fixture at home to Everton, so considering Kepa's budget-friendly price, I'm happy to hold him for now. This reasoning also explains the inclusion here of Mudryk in midfield as a big differential. In this current wildcard draft, it does have a healthy 5.6 million in the bank, and that's because initially I had planned on simply keeping De Bruyne here. However, due to planning for the long term, and needing to get rid of players that blank in game week 25, I'll probably move Bruno Fernandes onto De Bruyne next week instead when Man City have a double. It's obviously very early to be jumping on Mudryk FPL-wise, but from what I saw from him in his debut, I'm quite excited to own him as a differential. Brighton's Mitoma, another obvious option to go for here, but considering Brighton will blank in both 25 and 28 guaranteed, That's why I've opted for the Chelsea man for now, again to save me those blank game week headaches. Owning Bruno Fernandes for this double was also a big factor in wildcarding this week, so I'm happy to be able to do that hit-free and then very likely and conveniently move him onto De Bruyne next game week. As mentioned, I was keen to restructure my team following the bench boost, and for the long term move to a 3-5-2. So that explains the inclusion of Nonto of Leeds this game week, who's a budget 5 million, but conveniently boasts a double game week for 22, so a nice differential punt there which for most weeks I can simply bench. Notably though, Leeds do face Southampton at home in blank game week 25, so his inclusion also keeps that game week in mind and covers me nicely. I did consider Patrick Bamford in his place here as a nice differential punt, but considering he's over 2 million more than Nonto, it just didn't seem worth the risk, especially considering the new structure of 3-5-2 was a main focal point of the wildcard. On the bench this week, I freed up cash by going back to Ward as my secondary goalkeeper. Mitrovic also retains his place in the squad for now, and that's due to him being a reliable option that will also cover me for blank game week 25, as he boasts a home fixture against Wolves then. He also faces Forest at home in game week 23 next week, so happy to hold on to him for a couple of game weeks more at least. Hopefully he doesn't punish this week away to Chelsea, however. Also on the bench this week is 3.9 million enabler Rico Lewis at Man City. Granted, he's a risky third Man City option, considering he's very susceptible of being subbed on or off for 1-pointers. However, with Cancelo now gone on loan to Bayern, that surely gives Rico Lewis a little more security on minutes, and shows just how much faith Pep has in him. I've been very impressed with Rico Lewis this season, and at a bargain 3.9 million it's just too good to pass up, cheap enough to bench if needed. Lewis will also importantly cover Man City's double game week in 23 next week, and hopefully he isn't outscored too considerably by his defensive teammates then, who all come in at more than 1 million extra. A good enabler hopefully. Tyrone Mings also makes the cut at a budget 4.3 million. He'll warm the bench most weeks for me, but importantly Aston Villa don't have a blank game week in 25, 28 or even 32, so he's a guaranteed 90-minute man that will cover me for the very long term nicely. For the captaincy this game week, a fairly straightforward decision for me, with Rashford's superb form, particularly at home, in back-to-back home games against Palace and Leeds. The armband has always been on him. Understandably, a big consideration for the triple captaincy for many FPL managers this week, but with me personally now utilising the wildcard, I can't use the triple captainship even if I wanted to. That decision's been taken out of my hands and probably I'd have saved it anyway. So that's the wildcard team I put together a day before the game week, and I don't expect many changes to happen for the Friday night deadline. The only player that I'm a bit twitchy about is Mudryk, who I'm very excited about owning, but he's still very much an unknown. Mitoma very much a consideration for this spot, but his blanks do complicate things. Whilst simply opting for De Bruyne from the get-go here, and therefore saving the headache of buying him for game week 23 does seem a safer play. That said, I'm likely to stick with what I have now. Good luck to you all for game week 22, FPL responsibly, and I'll catch you all very soon.